Hi
Hi
guys.
guys, welcome back again to the channel. I'm so happy having you on today's video, and let's get right into today's reaction.
Watch exclusive history videos, like our latest on South America's Wars of Independence over on Armchair History TV. Use code ARMCHAIR75 for 75% off your first month. On the first days of 1815, British guns pounded American earthworks in Louisiana's swampy bayous. Thousands of redcoats advanced against the outnumbered defenders. Freshly victorious over Napoleon, the British were ready to project their full might on the young republic. But in just 30 minutes, hundreds of redcoats lay dead. It was a decisive victory for the Americans, yet the battle seemed like pointless bloodshed. It did not affect the course of the war at all. A peace treaty was already signed in Ghent, dominated by two words: status quo. The War of 1812 went down in history as a war that nobody won. Neither the United States nor the United Kingdom achieved its strategic goals or gained any territory. Still, the United States united.
Okay, yeah, the War of 1812, we've actually done the reaction to
To
that
something,
when
yeah.
the Native Americans were allies to the Britain,
Mm,
and I think America was trying to colonize Canada at the moment. British were trying to, I don't know. I don't think Britain were actually trying to gain territory in America, but I feel like they wanted to just desolate the whole country as at then because the White House was, burnt and all of the stuffs.
yeah.
But in the question, who really won the war?
That's what we are trying to actually ascertain from this video and to learn about the whole process that took place during the war. So sorry for that pause.
United Kingdom, and even Canada all came out ahead after the conflict ended. And this begs the question, who really won the War of 1812? Before we continue, I'd like to thank the sponsor of today's video, War Thunder, the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made. Take command of over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships of 10 major nations, ranging from biplanes and armored cars of the 1920s to the fighter jets and main battle tanks of today. Immerse yourself in intense combat, where incredibly detailed vehicles, realistic graphics, and authentic sound effects place you right at the helm of the most powerful war machines of our time. I'm especially impressed with War Thunder's dynamic and detailed damage mechanics, which assigns damage to your vehicle's crew and components rather than using hit
I'm actually
points,
waiting
and its
to
in-depth
see
comprehensive
the whole graphics of
customization
it.
system, which offers countless camouflages, historical markings, and decorations for all types of vehicles, including community-created ones. Play War Thunder now for free on PC, PlayStation, or Xbox. Join a worldwide community of over 70 million players in epic PvP battles today, and delve into the breathtaking experience that is War Thunder. Sign up today using our link in the description below. And for a limited time, new and returning players that haven't played for at least 6 months will receive a massive bonus pack that includes an exclusive Eagle of Valor vehicle decorator. By James Madison's second term as president, Americans had a long list of grievances against the United Kingdom, which had constantly undermined the United States. Through its orders in council, Britain forbade all neutral countries from trading with France. Royal Navy vessels even forcibly conscripted American sailors into British service to fill up manpower reserves in the fight against Napoleon. This policy, known as impressment, greatly angered the American population. Many Americans also felt that sovereignty and independence were at stake. Britain supported several American Indian tribes and confederations, most notably Tecumseh's Confederation, and tried to create a native buffer state to thwart American expansion. Through traders in Canada, Britain supplied the tribes with weapons and ammunition that enabled them to raid throughout the American frontier. In addition to the grievances, many in the
My question is this, right? Today, America and Britain is the strongest allied nation in the world. So my question is this: what led to such confliction back then. Because if you look at it, right, Great Britain, right, was also going around the world conquering and
Nations, yeah.
colonizing nations. And I feel like the same thing they just said about the Americans, that they wanted to curtail their expansion.
Yeah,
So my question is this: why did they want to curtail
their
their
expansion.
expansion? And because they were doing
Same
similar.
thing.
I don't know whether you get where I'm coming from. Like they were doing similar thing all over the world, but yet they wanted to curtail the expansion of the USA. I really want to get that explanation. If you have an idea of that, please let me know in the comment section.
The southern and western US sought to annex some, if not all, of Canada, although this was a controversial topic. In the summer of 1812, the long list of complaints motivated Madison to ask Congress to declare war. Ironically, Britain had already ordered the suspension of the orders in council, which had led to so many American grievances, but the news had not yet reached US soil by the time war was declared. At first, it seemed like the British faced overwhelming odds. Napoleon still dominated Europe, and now an overstretched, financially burdened Britain was forced to open another faraway front. Its territories were threatened by an ambitious republic with a far larger population than British North America. Fortunately for the Crown, the American armies weren't ready to defeat Britain in Canada. American forces were underprepared and led by elderly, cautious leaders. Madison was a shy scholar with little knowledge of warfare. His Secretary of War, William Eustis, obtained the position through political connections,
Can I borrow that
not
book
skill.
after you?
Instead of a quick conquest of Canada, the war escalated to include all of eastern North America. Britain and its American Indian allies fought the Americans in the Northwest, across the Great Lakes, and in the Deep South. Famously, they even captured Washington, D.C. and burned down the White House in 1814. In that particular battle, they failed to take their main goal, Baltimore. It was that battle that inspired Francis Scott Key to write the Star-Spangled Banner. Many American offensives failed, but the nation did succeed defensively, like at Lake Erie and New Orleans. The war created a new sense of identity, patriotism, and unity, kick-started economic and military reform, and reshaped the political landscape. Overall, the War of 1812 did not create a military victory, but it did produce a number of cultural, economic, and geopolitical victories. In the case of the United States, they achieved a defensive victory. The Madison administration wanted to assert American independence from the United Kingdom and guarantee its rights to international law as a sovereign nation. Prominent politicians, from
So,
John C.
are they saying that
Calhoun
America
to
was not a sovereign nation back
Yeah,
then?
I think it wasn't. And some people say the war wasn't actually for American independence. It was because America went against the British, and they were being oppressed by them, because as at then British was like one of the top ruling country. But at the same time, I still want to get the whole picture. Like,
Yeah.
how will I put the word?
How it all started,
Yeah.
how it all went, and where it headed to.
Like, how did the British get to put American, like, I know they are superior as at then, but America was like a boy to them. Do you get?
Then
Were
yeah,
they like struggling to get the land for themselves, or
I felt like then let me put it in the context that I feel like I understand the position in which they were then. America was a nation, but I think Britain then was the superpower of the world. You understand? So it's more like trying to bring this nation under them completely.
they actually took their settlers as their manpower?
Yeah,
Like, they're actually ruling like they were.
exactly. So Sorry for that pause again.
to Henry Clay all agreed that making American trade subject to the will of the British Crown essentially meant reinstating the colonial system. The war was mostly a bluff to force policy concessions from Britain. If the war is seen as a bluff to change British policy, a US defensive victory becomes more meaningful. The British Empire couldn't maintain harmful policies that America would simply have to comply with. Battles at Lake Champlain, Fort McHenry, and New Orleans proved that the British could not force the Americans into pro-British compliance. After the War of 1812, the United States emerged as a far more unified nation. During the war, the Democratic-Republican Madison administration was frustrated by Federalists in New England who opposed the war, refused to contribute militias, and even covertly traded with British forces in Canada. The Federalists were one of the most important casualties of the war. As war support rose in the United States, especially after the Battle of New Orleans, the anti-war Federalists were discredited as unpatriotic. During the last weeks of 1814, as rising military star Andrew Jackson prepared the defenses of New Orleans and the ink on the Treaty of Ghent dried, New England Federalists met in Hartford. They discussed the war, the federal government, and relations with the United Kingdom. Some firebrands even argued for secession. The convention angered many Americans and damaged the Federalist Party beyond repair. The party soon ceased to exist as a political force, replaced by a newfound unity under the Democratic-Republican Party. Aside from the political and cultural shifts the War of 1812 and the collapse of the Federalist Party caused, the United States emerged as a more powerful military and economic force. Its initial military unpreparedness highlighted the need for change. The United States needed a stronger navy. Maritime rights took center stage in this conflict, which required a powerful navy to enforce and defend. The American Navy proved its value, especially at Lake Erie and Lake Champlain, where it thwarted British supply lines and ground the offensives to a halt. After the war, Congress passed the Act for the Gradual Increase of the Navy, which significantly enlarged the US fleet. The United States also became much more powerful economically. The war provided a large stimulus to American manufacturing. The trade restrictions with Europe had forced the United States to develop its own manufacturing market to continue developing goods that were previously imported from Europe. By 1815, the American geopolitical situation was far better than it was in 1812. Though the Treaty of Ghent restored the status quo between Britain and the United States, other factions were considerably weakened or even destroyed. Britain's American Indian allies, like Tecumseh's Confederacy and the Red Sticks faction of the Muskogee, were soundly defeated. Spain's hold over Florida was crippled after American strategic invasions of Mobile and Pensacola, and Spain would sell the territory to the United States just 3 years later. And while the US did not acquire Canada, the war enabled westward expansion that would expedite America's rise to great power status.
Wow. Incredible.
Like the US, the United Kingdom emerged from the War of 1812 with a defensive victory. Though conquering Canada may not have been an American objective, the Empire's hold on its North American territories was under threat. Weeks after the war was declared, American armies crossed the Detroit River into sparsely populated Ontario. American invasions in Canada repeatedly failed. After being defeated in Ontario, British forces under Major General Isaac Brock captured Detroit with an outnumbered force. Detroit served as a base for British and Shawnee forces to threaten the American Northwest for over a year. Another American invasion across the Niagara was beaten back at Queenston Heights, once again by an outnumbered British force. Canada's largest cities, Montreal and Quebec City, were never seriously threatened. British successes extended beyond Canada. The capture of Washington and burning of the White House was one of the war's most notable acts. In
Wow.
1813 and 1814, the Royal Navy took control of the Chesapeake Bay, trying to divert American forces from Canada and pressure the US into a favorable peace deal. While occupying Washington was a notable British victory, the strategic offensive mostly failed. The British were defeated in their attempts to capture Baltimore, the main prize of the campaign. Rather than demoralizing Americans, the burning of the White House galvanized them. Even the anti-war Federalists condemned the act. Britain's biggest claim to victory in the War of 1812 was America's failure to enforce any of its war goals. The Orders in Council and impressment were the main motivations for the United States to go to war. While these policies were repealed by the end of the conflict, it was not a decision that came about as a result of American pressure. Even before the war, British politicians were divided on the empire's commercial policies. Due to their growing tensions with the United States and the worsening economic situation in England, Britain officially repealed the orders on June 23rd, just 5 days after the US had declared war. Madison only learned of the repeal months later. Although the tensions with the US influenced the decision, the war effort itself had little effect. Impressment also ended on Britain's own terms. After Napoleon's first surrender in 1814, there was no longer a need to recruit foreigners to fill the dwindling supply of sailors. Although the war highlighted the problem of impressment, American military pressure far from forced an end to the policy. For Britain, the geopolitical reality post-war was a double-edged sword. While they kept their maritime policies, Britain lost many American Indian allies and had to give up on its desire to create an Indian buffer state in the American Northwest. However, by abandoning Tecumseh's Confederation and the Muskogee, Britain aimed to foster a more pragmatic and cooperative relationship with the United States. To London, the United States served British strategic and security interests much better as a partner than a frustrated geopolitical rival that cost the empire many resources.
And imagine what happened afterwards. Like the British were standing with the Native Americans, but
Yeah.
after everything,
They stood with the Americans. I feel at that moment, I feel like the Native American will be very disappointed because
Yeah,
what the heck just happened?
I can't just imagine it.
Yeah. Those times, I feel like, back then in the days, it's all about who benefits who more.
Yeah,
It's about what each
it's a
person can bring
win-win,
to the
yeah.
table.
It's a win-win situation.
Exactly. So they looked at it. I feel like that time they felt like American was a more greater ally than the natives as of then.
I think they were more populated than the natives.
Exactly.
In
So
regards, and they had more weapons.
and the benefit of creating an equal partnership with them skyrocketed any other thing than being their rival at that time.
And I feel like the damage was becoming too much because even in the case of World War One, I'm just thinking of, okay, I know the men as at then. I'm thinking of the women, the children. Because in those scenarios, all these situations now, people are being killed. Although the numbers aren't recorded yet, like we don't know the number of people that died during this war, but come on, it's still human being dying. So I just think they wait and just come to a conclusion of
resources to contain.
Canada.
The nation created.
At face value, the Canadian claim to victory seems far-fetched. After all, Canada did not exist as a single nation until the colonies confederated in 1867. Nowadays, the war plays an important role in the Canadian national saga, serving as a war that made Canada. In the early 19th century,
I actually thought the Canada was a country on its own.
Not just that, I think Canada also comprises of the native Indians.
happened? I did what?
Oh, this reminds me of a I think a video I saw recently where the Canada um um I think their ambassador or something like that. I don't really remember the name of the person they posted. They were, you know, protesting, and then they were singing this war cry. I can't really remember the this. And I was like, why do they sound more like native Indians?
Yeah,
I think it
Americans.
makes more sense to me right now.
Yeah.
It makes more sense to me right now. Wow.
I think the Canadians are the people that benefited from the war, to be
history
honest.
history is a big book.
In my opinion, I would say the Canada won because they became a country afterwards.
Our cost. Our cost. It's not all about, you see, actually I would say it's a win-win for all three nations, because they say the only win in any deal is a win that nobody is actually happy. Do you understand? Is a win. But when one person is happy, which means another person is losing. So a win-win for me is like, I feel like all three want something. The Britain lost their alliance or their relationship with the Native Americans and gained the Americans. While the Americans, were able to, resist both the Britain
Yeah.
and the Native American and still won an alliance and a sovereignty in that time with the Britain. And Canada at the same time fighting off all this with the help
Help
of
of
the
the British,
Britain.
yeah.
At the end of the day, lost the Britain but gained independence and
I
sovereignty.
think the only person that lost was the Native
I
American.
feel like the people that lost more are the dead.
Are they dead?
Yeah, because the dead are dead. That is where the greatest loss is. But aside from that, for me, I feel like it's a win-win situation. Because if this war had not happened, America would not have become a power nation today. If it did not happen, Canada would not have been Canada today.
British Canadians, French Canadians, and First Nations together. For instance, the Royal Canadian Mint produced a commemorative coin in 2012 depicting a British sergeant, a Quebecois soldier, and an Iroquois soldier side by side
wow.
to fight for their homes. The War of 1812 would become a symbol in Canadian nationalism to profile the nation as the other to the United States. Poets framed the Canadians as the virtuous loyalists who stood by noble Britain in its darkest hour, when the continent of Europe was drenched with the blood of nations. The tyrant had his feet upon their neck, and England alone stood erect. The Democratic Party in the United States, most hostile to liberty, declared war against Britain and invaded Canada. The emerging theme in Canadian literature was one of a peaceful people who dropped their plows and grabbed their muskets to fight off the hordes of undisciplined American rabble for king and country. Like the Battle of Thermopylae, the Canadian Loyalists were Spartans who repelled the thousands of foreign invaders. Figures like Laura Secord, who warned the British of an impending American attack on the Niagara Peninsula, became prominent figures in Canadian nationalism. Isaac Brock and Tecumseh were considered heroes for their fights against American aggression, and their fighting deaths only solidified their legendary status. Although the War of 1812 doesn't play a huge role in modern Canadian public consciousness, politicians as recent as Stephen Harper framed the war as a defining event for modern Canada. So who really won the War of 1812? While good arguments exist for the United Kingdom and Canada, the United States most clearly emerged with a better geopolitical position. By defeating the Indian nations, finding a new national fervor, and experiencing significant economic expansion, the war catalyzed American growth in the following decades. While Britain secured its empire, and Canada gained a national origin myth, they both did so by acquiescing to, rather than curbing, American ambitions. The war ultimately allowed the United States to rise to great power status, while Britain and Canada ended the war, in geopolitical terms, with a status quo. Thank you to War Thunder for sponsoring today's video. Play for free on PC, Xbox, or PlayStation by using my link in the description below. And for a limited time, new and returning players that haven't played in 6 months will also receive a massive bonus pack across all platforms. Don't forget to check out Armchair History TV and use code ARMCHAIR75 for like our videos on Mussolini's black shirts, is videos like the surrender of Japan in World War II, the India.
I think these are all adverts right now. Honestly, I feel like we just got schooled in a lot of ways, because some of these things are some things we do not even have any idea of. You understand? And I think that was the reason why they say know your history. Yeah, knowing your history helps you a lot as an individual, because I got to learn a lot watching this video about some specific facts that I was unaware of.
Had no basic clue of.
Yeah.
We have basic knowledge of
it, but not in depth.
Yeah, not like as in depth as this is.
No, not in depth clue. And I would really love to be checking out more videos like this, because it teaches me about things I am not aware of.
Acquaintance with.
So, like I said before, for me it's like a win-win.
Well, I'm actually asking, like, what's your own opinion to my viewers right now? Who do you think actually won the war? And who do you think lost the most? In our opinion, we are going to say the Native Americans. And we are really sorry we are saying the Native Americans. But I think the people that won, to me, right, should be the Canada.
There's this saying someone said. He said, the Americans claim they won the war. Canada claimed they won the war. The British has forgotten the war. Like, for real, how did you guys forget you?
Because
literally went to war.
And the British, right? I don't think they fought to gain territory. They were just an oppressor at the moment.
Yeah, they just I felt like they just wanted
backlash to the Americans.
They just wanted to curtail the lot.
Because they burnt the White House, Washington. Like they just desolated the whole place.
The White House.
Oh my goodness! It was fun learning about this history.
The audacity for that alone.
It's really fun learning about the history and seeing how Americans increase their naval system pay, and start producing more things.
I feel like they learned their mistakes.
That are important from the British. Like they started being very
independent
independent
their
of
mistake
themselves.
and they corrected it immediately.
Just let us know what you think about this down below. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and we hope we didn't offend anybody with one or two things said from the video. Love you guys, and bye.